Hi everyone, my name's Smarty. I'm a Duelyst player. Technically, I've made the most profit out of any current Duelyst 2 player. Um, and I'm just here to have a talk about the expansion. I float around in the Discord a lot. I occasionally stream on Twitch. But this is just going to be me trying out a video where I talk about all the new cards and what I think of them. So, should we get started? So let's start with Lionar. Um, and let's start with Echo Mage. So Echo Mage is a 5 mana 4/6 with Zeal. The first time you cast a spell with this in Zeal each turn, put a 1-cost copy of that spell into your action bar until the end of your turn. So the wording on this is a little funky because it does actually describe exactly how this works, which is if it isn't in Zeal and you cast a spell and then you move into Zeal and cast a spell, you will get a copy of the second spell that you cast. Those copies are always 1 cost, even if the original was 0, like Beam Shock. And yeah. So in terms of things to copy with this, there's a couple of options, right? So on 8 mana, you can play Echo Mage Martyrdom Martyrdom, which is quite a powerful tempo swing. You kill 2 things, you peel your opponent's general a lot, but you have a 4/6 that kind of needs to die, because if it sticks, you can copy Holy Immolations to spend 5 mana on a spiral technique, an AoE spiral technique, effectively. It can copy Martyrdoms, it can copy Circles of Life. Generally, Echo Mage is just a very powerful card. I don't expect it to get a lot of value the turn it's played outside of the Martyrdom stuff or with the spell we're about to talk about, but if it sticks, it can be really, really problematic. Also, there's some room for clever sequencing with moving it out of Zeal and then moving back in so you copy the spell you want, blah blah blah. I'm a big fan of this card. I revealed it on stream a couple of days ago. I think it'll be very strong, sort of reminiscent of the same way that Ironcliff was a must-remove threat before the Divine Bond changes. I think Echo Mage is a must-remove threat, with the differences being that it's usually going to be backlined, but it's got less health. So next up, we have Augury. Augury, 1 mana Lionar spell, draw a card, you can replace 2 additional cards this turn. So the obvious thing to do with this, you jump to, is with Wings of Paradise, White Widow, Psionic Resonator, to get more replace triggers, more replace procs, and I think this card is good in decks containing those. I'm not sure those decks will be good. Notably, it does get Wings of Paradise to 9 attack, which is an enormous amount of power for pretty low investment, because Wings of Paradise is quite good, sort of generally, and this card is also quite good generally. I think that Augury is just sort of a very powerful consistency tool. It reminds me of the Magic the Gathering card Brainstorm, which is only legal in Legacy, one of the formats that lets you use cards all the way from Magic's sort of first sets until now, and it's one of the best cards in that format. The amount of consistency you get with Augury just means that your turns are just going to be a lot better than they otherwise would be if you can find time to sneak in a 1 mana spell, which should be pretty doable. Next, Cataclysm, 1 mana Lionar spell. You can only play this card if you've played at least 3 other cards this turn. Deal 5 damage to all minions. So I've given glowing reviews to the first 2 Lionar cards, and I think Cataclysm is actually the opposite. I think Cataclysm is pushing worst card in the game territory. It's a big effect, 5 damage to all minions, but how often are you going to be able to play it? This is the 4th card you play in a turn. And while Lionar does have some cantrips, it has Aerial Rift and now Augury to replace itself. That's still a lot of resources you're putting into, being able to play this spell. And Lionar has a lot of very powerful minions, but even the sort of control Lionar decks, like Fatigue Lionar, still plays Windblade and still plays Silverguard. And if you play a minion to help proc this spell, then it's just going to die when you Cataclysm. So I think that Oh, and another thing, actually. It doesn't actually help you win. It just helps you not lose. You're putting in a lot of effort for this spell, which doesn't get your opponent any more dead than they were at the start of your turn. And so, it can be a good idea often to warp your deck building and your play around win conditions, but I don't think Cataclysm is a win condition. It's a sort of stabilizer and not worth putting the amount of effort it demands of you into activating it. So yeah, that's my thoughts on Lionar. So next we have Songhai. So, 1 mana Songhai spell, Backstep. Teleport an allied minion to the space directly behind your general and put a blink into your action bar. And Blink is a 0 mana spell that can't be replaced and goes away at the end of your turn, and teleports an allied minion up to 2 spaces, like Kalios' Bloodborne spell, and it uses the same art, incidentally. So, the first thing that jumps out to me about Backstep is that it is 2 spell procs for 1 mana. So you can spend 1 mana and get 2 damage out of a 4 Winds Magus, or a Blood Rage Mask, or a Chakra Avatar. I think 4 Winds Magus is especially potent with Backstep, because if a 4 Winds Magus sticks, it's normally going to be in the backline, and you can use Backstep to pull it behind your general, and then blink it into the enemy general so that it can hit them as well for a powerful burst turn. Also, Backstep is 2 movement procs for Flame Wreath, which we'll get to shortly. But I think, in general, it's just a very versatile spell. You can use it for a lot of things, like saving Tuskboars by having them trade and then teleporting them behind your general. You can use a blink for something else in that situation if your general is far enough away, or you can blink away the Tuskboar at the end. Same with other inner-focused minions. After your Kaido Assassin backstabs something, if it's going to die, you can rescue it with blink. It's a really versatile card. I think it's going to be interesting to see how much play it sees, but I think it's quite strong and will be added to the sort of mid-range Songhai decks. Possibly not spell high, given how lean that deck is, but there's potential there for sure. So next we have Rhythm Weaver, which is a 1 mana 2/1 Songhai Arcanist with after this takes damage, draw a spell. So the obvious, neuron activation here is that it's good with Albeast's Edge, because you play this, you play a spell, it's a 2/3, you play another spell, it's a 2/5, and now for every time they hit it, you get to draw more spells. And I agree, it is great in Albeast decks, to be clear. I just think this card's good in general, though. It's a 1 mana 2/1, and usually when it dies, there are some ways it's going to die without taking damage, but most of those would be like hard removal being used on it, so not super worrying, if they're willing to martyrdom my 1-drop, power to them. It's going to draw you a card. And we have another 1 mana 2/1 when I die, draw a card. Draw a specific card, even. And that's Snow Chaser. So Snow Chaser is really good. And this card, I would say, is a similar power level to Snow Chaser. It's slightly less consistent at doing it, because, well, it's slightly less consistent in one way at doing it, because things like Plasma Storm will pick it up without giving you the spell. But, on the other hand, it doesn't require you to be an Infiltrate. And so, yeah, I think this card's pretty good. Flame Wreath. This one's a doozy. So Flame Wreath is a 4 mana 2/3 rush Songhai minion with after this moves or teleports, deal 1 damage to nearby enemies. This is very reminiscent of Duelyst I Flame Wreath, which had an extra point of health, no rush, and did an extra point of damage. And that card was fantastic. That card was one of Songhai's best cards. And I think this Flame Wreath is similarly powerful. It's 3 damage to something on the turn you play it, if you have to attack with it. And once you start getting, like, juxtapositions, backsteps, inner focuses, this can start, like, racking up damage pretty quickly. While in an AoE as well, and Songhai has traditionally struggled for AoE, such that they even play, like, Sword of Mechazor Inner Focus, which Sword of Mechazor is really not a good card by itself. So you can sort of see that Songhai has been desperate for AoE, and this might provide. Especially given that on 6 mana, you can combo Flame Wreath with Deathstrike Seal. And that combo is incredibly powerful, because it means that whenever Flame Wreath moves, it kills every minion, every enemy minion that it ends up next to. And if you can hide a Flame Wreath after doing that and make them have to spend removal on it, it's just a really, really powerful combination of cards. With 2 draw, you're getting more cards, so you don't need to worry as much about overspending on Flame Wreath turns, and obviously you don't need to spend the first one because it has Rush by itself. I think Flame Wreath is going to be, yeah, absolutely fantastic. Goes in most Songhai decks, just really powerful, really fun. Yeah. So next, we have Vitruvian. Vitruvian is an interesting set they have. So, Mercurian Pendant is a 1-mana artifact, the first artifact we've seen from this expansion, with 3 durability, provoke, 2 durability, flying, and 1 durability, celerity. So what this means is your general has those effects. They don't stack. When you're at 1 durability, you don't have provoke and flying and celerity. It's just, either or. And this card is really interesting. So, in terms of, standard usage, your general having provokes very powerful, but it goes away after 1 instance of damage, which is less powerful. Your general having flying is phenomenal, lets you run away from things, and your general having celerity is also very powerful, because Vitruvian has a lot of ways to add damage to your general with Aurora's Tears and its artifact, Staff of Yakir and Hexblade, and so celerity lets you double up on those buffs and really go to town. That being said, I should talk about the combo with this card and why I don't think it's very good. So the sort of combos people have been talking about are based on the idea that you can play Mercurian Pendant and then do damage to your own general somehow with Dreamgazer by replacing it, or Flameblood Warlock, and then equipping artifacts and Aurora's Tearsing, and then using your first movement to fly into the enemy general, hit them, which will break your artifact down to 1 durability, give you celerity, and then you can hit them again. And this is a lot of damage. Let's see here. So, if you go Mercurian Pendant, Flameblood, Staff of Yakir, Aurora's Tears, you're looking at 8 attack on your general. You're attacking them twice, and you've played a Flameblood, so you're looking at 19? 19 damage, which is a lot. But it is a 6-mana, 4-card combo, and the last time we've seen combos like this, they were slightly more expensive, right? But Magmar's Trilucidator deck was a 4-card combo that did 24 or 26 damage with a general hit, and that combo was totally fine. Wasn't great, wasn't awful, just kind of existed. And Magmar had way better tools for protecting itself while it tried to find the combo pieces. Vitruvian does have much better card selection with first and second wish, and some of these combo pieces are artifacts, so you can shoot them with Artifact Hunter, but I just think that this combo is going to be powerful and splashy, but not super reliable, and won't necessarily be the end of the world that some people are predicting it to be. It'll win a lot of its games in very exciting manners, but it will lose a lot of its games because it is playing a lot of cards that don't do much by themselves. Drain Morale, I have less to say about this one. 1 mana Vitruvian spell, give all minions -1/-0. I think it's pretty cool. I don't think it's very good. There's a lot of sort of interesting decisions you get to make about when you play this card, so that you can, if both players have a board, you can make the trades that are good before Drain Morale. You can play Drain Morale. You can use that extra health, effectively, it's giving the minions that hit each other, to make other exciting trades. I think that Drain Morale, it'd be cool if it was better, because it's really interesting, but I don't think it's very good. But let's get into the last one, because this one's really cool. Ancestral Vessel is a 2-mana, 2/2 Vitruvian minion. With Dying Wish, summon a Wind Dervish on this space. And a Wind Dervish is what you get out of the Obelisk. It's a 2/2 with Rush, and it disappears at the end of your turn. Not any turn, your turn. So if your opponent kills Ancestral Vessel on their turn, the Dervish sticks around until the end of your turn. So this card's being compared a lot to Jaxi, and I think it's a lot better than Jaxi, because with Jaxi, your opponent feels pretty good about hitting Jaxi, and then killing the mini-Jax, and be like, yep, good job, me. So you've got to be much more careful about protecting the mini-Jax. The mini-Jax dies to pings, and just generally there's a lot more burden on the Jaxi player to make sure that the Jaxi is doing work. Ancestral Vessel, though, if Ancestral Vessel dies on your turn, which is something usually with Jaxi you want to avoid, you're actually quite happy, because you get out a 2-2 rush that you can use to go face, or finish off the thing that Ancestral Vessel is finishing off, or Junecaster it. And so Ancestral Vessel just puts a lot of pressure on from a 2-drop. It's quite hard to remove in a way that people are going to be happy with. And the 2-2 nature of Ancestral Vessel and the Dervish, that's not a great stat line, but Vitruvian does have First Wish, one of the best cards in the game. And a 3-3, all of a sudden, whole different story. So yeah, I'm really excited for Ancestral Vessel. I think it's going to be really powerful in most Vitruvian decks as just sort of a really strong, high-pressure 2-drop. Abyssian. This one, people are excited about this one, and you can see why looking at this set. So, Bad Omen is a 0 mana 0/1 with Deathwatch. This gains +1/+0. Great name. I'm a huge fan. I like the sort of vibes it gives. It's a little weird. Sounds like a spell name, but this is a weird card because it costs 0. It's the first minion in Duelyst II to cost 0. We had a few in Duelyst 1. We had Slow before it was nerfed and Ray, but this is our first for this game, and it's not super impressive in terms of a body, which is fine, because you aren't investing any mana in it, and occasionally, this will get to 2 or 3 attack, and it'll be kind of annoying. What this is much more exciting for is the fact that it can get you mana tiles. It can do things like, on turn 1 for player 2, you can walk 2 forward, play a Bad Omen on the mana tile, and then play a 4-drop. That's pretty strong. If you have a perfect hand, you can even Darkfire sacrifice your Bad Omen and play a 6-drop. That's not super likely, but it's pretty powerful. But we have a pretty good 4-drop to talk about, so let's do that. Elder Chain Cultist is a 4 mana 4/4 with Dying Wish. The next minion you play with base cost 4 or more costs 4 less. This is another 0-cost creature, effectively. You're getting a refund when it dies, if it isn't dispelled or transformed. That's pretty great. There's a really... Abyssian has a lot of very powerful, expensive minions. It's got Vorpal Reaver, which is a faction minion that's debatably better than Archon, which is kind of nasty. It's got Spectral Revenant, which is one of the best cards in the game. And this is a neutral, but it's pretty good if it costs 4 less. There's Zuriel. So Zuriel, if you play it after an Elder Chain Cultist dies, will often resurrect the Elder Chain Cultist as well, which means that you're spending 5 mana for a 9/6 flying and another Elder Chain Cultist. That's an insane amount of value. More if Zuriel's getting anything else. And I think this is going to be a sort of really powerful card in a new sort of Abyssian deck that uses the Elder Chain Zuriel synergy alongside just like Darkfire Sacrifice into big things to basically just keep throwing big things at your opponent until they fall over and die. And yeah, people think this is going to be strong, and I agree. I think this is going to be one of the best decks post-expansion. Lastly, for Abyssian, we have Soul Scythe, which is a 3/2 Abyssian minion with Opening Gambit, destroy a nearby allied minion to draw 2 cards. So, this card's pretty cool. It is a 2-drop that falls under the classic Abyssian problem where none of their faction 2-drops have 3 health, but it's not awful to play on turn 1, it's a 3/2 that trades into other 2-drops. And later on, it's quite easy for it to draw 2 cards. You can use it to kill Sarlacc to draw cards. You can use it to kill Wraithlings to draw cards. In general, you can even use it like if you've traded a Healing Mystic into their face. It's a 2/1 now. You can Soul Size it, pick up 2 more cards. Just kind of awesome. So I think this is just going to be a really powerful card in a lot of different Abyssian decks. If you're making tokens, if you're playing Black Soulless to get the Wraithlings down, if you're playing Sarlacc, you should play Soul Scythe. You should be happy. Yeah. So Magmar, this is a sort of set I'm less impressed by. So let's get into it. Time Cloak Coiler is a 2/5 Magmar minion with, at the end of your turn, give your general +2/+0 until they move or teleport. So this card's interesting. It's a 3-drop, which is quite cheap. And baseline, it means that if they are hitting your general with stuff while it's in play, it's got 4 attack. That's pretty strong. It means that it's really hard to like go super face monkey into Magmar with this up, because all your stuff will die, and even if you kill it, you still can't do it that turn without getting, you know, a bunch of beatdown. If they want, Magmar can just keep sitting still and keep the buff. But it's kind of awkward against slower decks where you want to approach them because you're not able to use it as efficiently. You can't Silhouette Tracer because they've added Remove or Teleport. I don't think it's very good, but I'd be willing to be wrong. I think it's really interesting, and I'm looking forward to Magmar Mirrors where they both get up to 40 attack while standing just like slightly further away from each other, and nothing happens because if any of them move, they'll just lose. I will recommend, if you're playing this card, you should play at least one Sojourner so that sometimes you'll draw Cyclone Mask and make your opponent, you know, explode. I think that's pretty cool, but yeah. Hard to evaluate card. Next we have Anachronize, which is another difficult to evaluate card. It's a 4-mana spell. Destroy minions that were summoned since your last turn. So this will kill minions that your opponent played on their turn, and minions that you played before Anachronize on the turn you play Anachronize. It won't kill minions you played on your last turn. So this card reads like completely nuts, right? It's like basically Time Maelstrom, right? You kill all your opponent's stuff. That you basically skip your opponent's last turn, you get to keep doing stuff. Wow. I think it's a little worse. I mean, it's obviously worse than Time Maelstrom. I just think it's a little worse than people think, because it's really hard to find time to Anachronize when you're losing, which is the time when Magmar's other removal is a lot better. If you're losing and you Metamorphosis and, you know, you ping something, you've killed 2 things, that's great. If you're losing, and then your opponent plays a big thing, and you Anachronize, you're still losing. Which is not ideal. Like Plasma Storm, same thing, right? It doesn't have this sort of timing window, so if you've been losing for a while, Plasma Storm can dig you out, Anachronize cannot. Additionally, I think it's going to be a super common thing where somebody plays an Archon, and then you don't have an Anachronize, and then you, at the end of your turn, you draw an Anachronize, and you're like, this card sucks. So I think this card is probably better and more proactive Magmar decks, where they're trying to keep a hit on board, and then, you know, if your opponent doesn't kill your stuff and instead just plays stuff of their own, you can Anachronize and be like, nope, still winning, bub. That's probably its best spot, and maybe a 1 or 2 of in controlling Magmar decks that can just sort of sit on it for a while until it's a perfect time. I don't think it's the end of the world that this card was printed. Next is Progenitor. It's a 4-mana 3/5 Magmar minion with Opening Gambit. Summon 2 hatchling eggs nearby your general, and the eggs will hatch into hatchlings at the end of your next turn after playing Progenitor, which are 2/1s. So this card's kind of slow, but it's a lot of stats, right? It's a 4-mana 7/7, if you look at all of those. But it's very slow, and nearby your general is a pretty big downside, because if in a lot of standard positions, you can only protect 1 minion with your general by going sort of diagonally the opposite direction from whatever your general is standing next to. You can use a Progenitor body block, of course, but then if it dies, they can get to eggs. So the eggs are, like, reasonably accessible, which is the problem. I do think this card isn't great. It's worse than Black Solus. Black Solus is fantastic, obviously, so that's not a huge issue. I do want to mention its synergy with Twin Fang, because Twin Fang's quite a good card now, costs 1 mana. And if you have Twin Fang up and play Progenitor, your opponent's in a sort of hard spot, because if they clear the eggs, your Twin Fang grows, and obviously they want to use pings for both of those things, but you're giving them a lot of different ping targets. And if your opponent clears the Twin Fang, then you get to keep the hatchlings, and then your next Twin Fang gets nastier, just sort of generally a very powerful proposition. So I don't think this card's great. I think it'll go in the sort of Twin Fang aggressive Magmar decks, the sort of ones that play like Lady Lock Phalanxar, but it's not for everyone, and that's fine. Last for factions, we have Vanar. So let's start with Filger, Uncle Phil, named by, I think, Bald Eagle PC in its reveal stream, is a 5 mana 5/5 Vanar minion with opening gambit, both players lose a mana crystal. We had this card in July for a day or two. They mistakenly pushed what we now assume is like a test patch into production, which had Songweaver, which was this, but a 4/5 and neutral. And it wasn't very good. I don't think Filger is very good. I do think it's interesting, keeping your opponent off mana can be really powerful, but you're putting a lot of work into it because a 5 mana 5/5 is not good stats. And, if you build your deck to capitalize on people not having much mana and then you don't draw Filger, you're just playing a lot of cards that are sort of fast, but you're not going to scale very well into the late game if your opponent can get there, and I think they will be able to. So, I think Filger's a meme. I'm really excited to see people at 0 mana with, like, Keeper of the Veils popping off and that sort of thing, but, yeah. Don't think it's for a competitively minded player. Have fun with it, but that's life. Next is Mementos. So this card is good because, importantly, it lets you spot if anyone is not paying attention and has played Persona 5 recently. If anyone says Mementos, you know where that came from. So it's a 1 mana Vanar spell, which says summon 2 joined Mementos. Pretty simple, I like it. And Mementos, of course, are walls. They are 0 mana 1/1s with Dying Wish, draw a card. So this card's a bit like Blazing Spines, I think. I think it's better than Blazing Spines. There's some disagreement about that, because Blazing Spines obviously through attack trades really well, hits face well. But Memento gives you card draw, and Vanar has struggled with that. Their only in-faction card draw is Cryogenesis, which only replaces itself, whereas if both Mementos die, you actually go up cards. That can be difficult, obviously. Your opponent doesn't want to give you cards, they'll try and step away from Mementos. But then you can, do your classic War Vanar stuff. You can Aspect of a Drake them and surprise them with a 4/4 rush. Just sort of generally make their life difficult. If you need to, you can ping them off with Riftwalker yourself to get the cards. I just think Mementos is a really powerful card that I'm excited to play in Wars. Next is Bubblesmith, the last faction card of the expansion, and I think this one's probably one of the best. I was going to say best, but I chickened out at the last minute. So it's a 2 mana 2/3 Vesper with opening gambit. Give your general the next time this would take damage, reduce that damage to 1. I think of this as a sort of Healing Mystic side grade. And Healing Mystic is the best card in Duelyst. So a Healing Mystic side, or not the best card, the most played card in Duelyst. And I think, a side grade to that's pretty good. So the bonuses is that this can often heal a lot more than 2 health, effectively, by, say, if your general needs to punch an Archon to kill it. Well, you can Bubblesmith first, and then instead of taking 8 damage, you take 1. That's 7 health gained. Additionally, you can play it on turn 1 and still have the shield up for later. If you play a Healing Mystic on turn 1, you don't actually heal yourself for anything. Whereas if you Bubblesmith on turn 1, you've got the shield. If your opponent plays something like a Windblade, you can clear it with your general and feel pretty good about it. So, yep. It's also a Vesper, so it procs Glacial Elemental and can hold Frostfire. Glacial Elemental is a big thing, Frostfire less so, but with more cheap Vespers that are good, Frostfire gets a lot better, because that card is very powerful if it is targeting a Vesper consistently. The downsides, there's a couple. The first, sometimes this will heal you for no damage. Against, like, Burn Abyssian or Spell High, it's often going to heal you for nothing, because Burn Abyssian can play Blood Tear Alchemist or Void Pulse to knock off a shield, and Spell High can play a 4 Winds Magus or a Blood Rage Mask, and just sort of ping it off with no care in the world. So, and also it can't heal minions. I might have mentioned it already. If I haven't, here we go. It can't heal minions. That's a pretty big use for Mystic. So, yeah, Mystic side grade. Play it in most of your Vanar decks. Keep you alive. Good with Glacial, simple stuff. Next, we're heading into the neutrals. So, starting off, there are 3 of them for this wave. And we're starting off with Arcane Amplifier, which is a 3 mana 3/3 with spells you play that deal damage, deal +1 damage. This card's cool. Eight Gates is a Songhai card, which does this, sort of. But this card spreads it out to all the other factions, which is pretty cool. I don't think it's very good in any of them. I just wanted to list out a couple of the spells that it can really help. So, Bone Swarm, with an amplifier on the battlefield, becomes 3 damage to the general and enemies nearby them, which is pretty good. 3 damage is a very important breakpoint, especially for AoE spells, because it kills most 2-drops. Breath of the Unborn, for the same reason, 3 damage to everything, nice. And Tremor, which now does 3 damage. I don't think any of these are important. I don't think these factions are like lacking AoE, especially like the jump from 2 to 3 damage for Tremor is like you could just Plasma Storm. But it's interesting and worth thinking about if at a later date becomes some faction spells that deal damage multiple times outside of Songhai, because Songhai has 8 gates for a much more efficient go at this effect. Next is Deja Vu Engineer, which I think is probably the strongest card in the expansion, possibly second behind Elder Chain Cultist. So, it's a 4-mana 3/5, with Opening Gambit, destroy a nearby allied minion, then resummon it on that space and give it +1/+1. And this card is very versatile. It reminds me of old Consuming Rebirth, because, you know, which was 2-mana Abyssian spell, destroy a friendly minion, resummon at the end of the turn, and give it +1/+1. So, Deja Vu Engineer, good with the same things Consuming Rebirth was good with. It's good with Sarlacc. You get to kill a Sarlacc, you get to make a copy. Nice. More Sarlaccs. People love it. It's also good with obelisks, or other things that are vulnerable to Dispel, because you can... if your opponent dispels an obelisk, and is like, well, no problem. Nice. Deja Vu Engineer. Back to working. Or high health minions like Portal Guardian. If it gets chipped down a bit, you can Deja Vu Engineer to bring it back. Portal Guardian less impressive because it'll lose the attack buffs. But sort of any high health minion, you can Deja Vu Engineer to heal, which is pretty cool. Vindicator, you can reset the rush bonus on to... I don't know if it'll give the Deja Vu Engineer rush. If it does, that's great. If it doesn't, whatever. That's probably better, to be honest. I think this is just a really versatile card that's going to be powerful in a lot of different decks to just sort of solve problems and make sure that things are going better for you. Whew. And next, this card is not strong, but it is my favorite in this expansion. This is fantastic. This is an 8-mana 8/8, and it's called Synchronic Abomination. It uses Meltdown Sprite, an infamous card from Duelyst II. And it says, whenever there are 8 units nearby this, destroy them. Note, unit and minion mean different things, because generals are units. If your opponent's general is nearby this, and Synchronic Abomination gets surrounded, you win. As long as your general isn't near it as well, in which case it's a draw. This is awesome. This is so cool. I just want to like gush about this card for a bit. Like, what a cool idea. It's sort of an alt-wing condition. It just blows your opponent's general up. Fantastic stuff. I also think, quite funnily, this card gets a lot more powerful alongside Elder Chain Cultist. Because Elder Chain Cultist is a way to make this come out for only 4 mana. And Abyssian has a lot of ways to make lots of cheap minions. You can play Gloom Chaser and get 2 slots in for 2 mana. You can play Wraithlings from Black Solus, which are 0 mana minions. You can play Wraithling Swarm, that's 3 slots for 3 mana. And so if you have a small board, you've got a dead Elder Chain, I think it's not super unreasonable that you just play a Synchronic and then pop it that turn and win the game. So that's where I'd try this card out. I don't think it'll be better than the Zuriel versions. I think it'll be much cooler, and I'm definitely really hoping to see this happen. Hopefully by me, but if somebody else does it to me, that's life. Card's awesome. Big fan. It's just so cool. So cool. So, now we're heading into the change cards for this patch. I thought I might as well do a header on them while I was talking about the expansion cards. It'll be quick. I don't have much to say about most of them. Just, very quick thoughts. So Zenru the Blightspawned no longer steals things. He just destroys them and gives you copies of them. I don't think he's as good. He's almost always worse. You can't steal Sarlaccs, notably. That's pretty bad. Just generally, I don't think Zenru is going to see much play anymore. unless there's like some really nasty minions. He still strongly punishes, you know, things like Purgatos or Bone Reaper because he kills them, but not in nearly as horrible a way as he used to. And his use case on 2-drops is a lot worse now, giving you a 2/2. A 5 mana for a 4/3 and a 2/2 and killing me a 2/3 is like, okay. But, you know, that's kind of Dancing Blades level. Totally fine. Riftwalker loses 1 health. I think Riftwalker is still going to be great. It dies to pings now, so it's worse, but I think it's still, you know, you're playing Riftwalker for the opening gambit, and the fact that it has a body, and you aren't really fussed what the body is. Blazehound now costs 2 less rather than 1 less to play if the enemy general took damage this turn. I think this is a huge change. I think that aggressive decks are going to be really happy with Blazehound now. If you're an aggressive minion deck, if you're playing Ladylock, which will come up in a second, you're paying 1 mana for a 5/4 provoke. That's pretty gross, as long as you can get some face damage in. So I think that aggressive snowbally decks will want Blazehound because it's a good card for aggressively snowballing. Archon Spellbinder, 6 mana, 8/7 now, rather than 8/8. And I think this is a pretty small nerf. I think Archon is obviously worse now. It'll probably still go as a sort of top end of choice in most decks. Notably, now 7 health, an important breakpoint for the minion Red Singer, who does 7 damage when your general takes damage. So Archon having a really clean neutral answer is pretty cool. It means that, hey, if you want to go Archon hunting, you can play Red Singer, be happy, nice. Also makes Archon worse to flash out, because 5 health is very doable for a lot of decks. So, generally, really healthy change. Big fan. Ladylock. This one's complicated. So she's still a 3 mana 2/3 provoke. Her opening gambit's changed a bit. Now it says, other minions you summon this turn gain +1/+1. Other minions you play this turn gain provoke. So, summon is from anywhere. If a minion hits the board, it was summoned. If a minion play is from hand. If a minion was played, it came out of your hand by spending mana. So, this means that Ladylock is better with tokens, because before she did not give them +1/+1. But worse with things like Dreamgazer and Orb Weaver or Decapotheosis, because she doesn't give those tokens provoke as well. So I think this is a cool change. It means Locke's better in like the sort of tokeny decks that I feel like she was sort of meant to be good in, but not oppressive. She can't give Bone Chill barriers provoke, which is the reason she was nerfed in the first place. Yeah, just sort of nice, healthy change. Wording's a little complicated, but I think it's good for the game. And then Chrysalis Burst goes from 3 mana to 2 mana. I honestly have no idea. I've only seen Zohan play Chrysalis Burst before, and I mean Zohan made it look good, but Zohan could make like actually anything look good. So, you know, 2 mana is very cheap. So I'm thinking that possibly there's some sort of Swarmy Magma, or possibly the like the Mana Forger, Mind Steel decks might want Chrysalis Burst, because if you're paying 1 mana for this, that's a lot of stuff. Yeah, so that's the video. I hope everyone enjoyed my sort of kind of rushed thoughts. This is going up the day before the patch. I've had the patch notes for a couple of hours to read and think about, and I hope that people are willing to share their opinions with me, either in the comments, or you can @me on Discord, or when I next stream, hopefully when the expansion comes out. And I also hope that all of my comments age well, and that if I made any wrong predictions in this video, that people can make fun of me as much as they want, because that's kind of cool. Yeah. Goodbye, everyone.